try to defend if you're doing a gut wrench. If you have to set your leg underneath to drive off of, to set your opponent on your hips, oftentimes the knee will come up and there's space in there. At that time, your opponent's able to hook your foot with his foot. And the motion looks like this. From a defensive position, as he's trying to turn my hip over, I'm going to raise up, bring this knee up, and try to hook his foot here in this position. So it looks like this. If he's trying to do a gut wrench on me, and he's moving out, and he sets his leg underneath me here. From this position, I turn my hip down, but I keep, at the same time my hip's down, I want to stay square. As he drives off his bottom leg here, I'm going to bring this foot up and hook. From there, they'll cross wrist here and work in for a pin or points. So I want to be able to show you how to counter that so you don't panic anytime you know that you have an opponent that does that. It's very important that as you start your gut wrench and you have them loaded up, that you don't drive and create a lot of space in here. I want to leave this leg down, especially if I know this guy likes to hook with his foot. From this position right here, I can't allow that room there so he's able to do that. Watch the difference. Another technique that we want to be able to do off of a gut wrench is capture your opponent's wrist. I think it's very important that you understand that anytime you're in a parterre position, it's not a time to rest. It's an opportunity for you to score points. And so this time, I'm going to put a combination together, do a gut wrench, and about 80% of the time you do a gut wrench, you're able to capture your opponent's wrist and go into another combination or turn. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Anytime you work a mid-level gut wrench, it's very important for you to look for combinations off of that. And look to capture that wrist. You know, every third time you do a gut wrench, look to capture it. And make sure you add it into your practice plan so that anytime you work on your gut wrenches, you go right from a gut wrench, capture a cross wrist, and go into a Turk or a roll. Another series. Okay, we've talked about driving a gut wrench, breaking your opponent's elbow down to the mat, using your shoulder to drive his shoulder, and using real pressure to turn your opponent. You got a nice tight grip. Now we're going to switch to a little side move or a one-arm gut wrench or a gut wrench where you're using tactics and just turning your opponent's hips. And very simply, this is what in collegiate style would be a hip tip. But you get your opponent in a referee's position. And one of the things that, because they have escapes now, your opponents try to do is hand fight you from a base. Anytime an opponent's trying to hand fight you from a base and you have one hand around the waist, you should be able to gut wrench him to the same side that he's trying to hand fight. Show you what I'm talking about. From this position here, I go to, as soon as he starts to do that, he can have this hand. It doesn't matter. As long as, again, we turn our opponent's hips in a gut wrench. To do that, we have to be elbow deep. We don't want our elbow high. So when he's fighting this hand here, I just go deep with this arm. Now I take this hand, and he's got a hold of it, set it underneath here, and gut him. And I do that by keeping my chest tight to his back. I pull him right into my lap, and rather than driving forward, I take him sideways. Okay, again, he's going to hand fight on the whistle. Go. In that position right there, he can have my hand. From here, I'm going to load him into my lap, here. Now I'm just going to pop my hips, throw this up in this direction. Here. One other technique that you can use when your opponent is hand fight, just like collegiately, if he grabs my hand, that brings it back and I'll be able to cross wrist and take his hand. Go. He's hand fighting there. Again, if he grabs this hand, I'm going to cross wrist it here and use that for a hip tip. I'm going to drive my shoulder in, pull him right up here. In that position. Another important thing that you're able to do sometimes off the whistle is use tactics to turn your opponent. This time my opponent's going to get set in the referee's position. He's down, he's ready to wrestle. And rather than me come in and show my hands and turn right away, I'm going to actually distract him a little bit, and then I'm actually going to try to beat the whistle. Remember, it's very important that if I jump, I'll get a friendly warning. And I want to make sure I don't jump again. If I do 2 false starts, then my opponent can get a point and a caution against me. But the first one's free. If you have an opportunity to study tape, the South Koreans are really good at this technique. They'll come up in this position, they'll talk to the ref, they'll set their feet, they'll do this, so this guy turns around, and then they'll drop down real quick and load them up. And it's just a tactic. I'm going to do a quick gut wrench on the whistle. I can do a lock, or I can do a one-arm gut. The next technique we're going to work on is a low-level gut wrench. And very simply this time, if your opponent